Okay, so this will be the second section on logic. So section 2 is on logical fallacies. Okay. Last time we were talking about valid arguments. This time we're going to talk about invalid arguments. Okay. So a fallacy is an argument that is not valid. Okay. This is called fallacious. Okay. A type or form of this argument is called a fallacy. Okay. And there are a lot of logical fallacies. Okay. The easiest ones to spot are deductive. Okay. And we'll see a bunch of those coming up. And we'll also see some inductive ones later on. Okay. All right, the most common of fallacy might be called a rhetorical. I'm not going to test you on this stuff, on necessarily the definitions, okay? But we'll see how these come into play here in a little bit. All right, so to help us organize rhetorical fallacies that we'll focus on, we can divide them into 3 categories, okay? And this will help you understand or remember. But again, we're not necessarily going to be testing you on this. Okay? Fallacies of relevance are not valid because they have premises that are not related to establishing the conclusion. Okay? So we might just have random things that don't have anything to do with what we're trying to conclude. Okay? Those are fallacies of relevance. Okay? Fallacies of misinterpretation are not valid, okay, because ideas interpreted differently in the premises. And a very common one here is sufficiency. Fallacies of sufficiency are not valid because their premises are not really enough to establish the conclusion. Okay, so there's just not enough information to come up with the conclusion that we're trying to do. You'll see here in a second. Okay. All right, so consider some of these common fallacies of relevance. In these examples, the premises are not related to whether or not the conclusion is true. Okay? You shouldn't take Jack's tax advice. He cheated on his wife. Okay? So there's a premise, but really doesn't have anything to do with it. Tax advice and cheating on his wife, 2 different things. Okay? So this is called what we refer to as a personal attack. In an ad hominem argument, one claims that a statement is false because it comes from someone that is, either bad or unreliable. Okay? So here we're saying don't take his tax advice because he cheated on his wife. We're just attacking him. Okay? He might know a lot about taxes, but he cheated on his wife, so he's a bad person, which makes him not reliable. Okay? So that's a fallacy. We don't want to use that. Okay? This multivariate must be good. My math teacher recommended it. Okay? This is what's referred to as an argument of authority. Okay? In an argument of authority, one claims that a statement is true because it comes from someone good or reliable. So just the opposite of what we just had. Okay? So my math teacher recommended it, so this vitamin must be good. But that's irrelevant. Okay? Again, a fallacy of relevance because a math teacher doesn't necessarily know anything about vitamins. Okay? So that's an argument of authority. Okay, we're saying the statement is true just because it comes from somebody who we deem to be good or reliable. Okay? All right, in both cases, the facts about this person must not matter to the claim. It doesn't matter who these people are, what they've done. The claim doesn't match up. Okay? The first example would be different if it were marriage advice. Okay? Because he cheated on his wife, so that would have something different. Okay? The second would be would be recommended by a doctor. Okay? Now, that would be a sound or a valid argument because we're taking advice from a doctor rather than a teacher. Okay? All right, so again, these are fallacies of relevance. Okay? Another one would be what we call an appeal to incredibility. So these are, I guess, things that are going to show up on your test. You're going to be given something and you're going to be asked what type of fallacy is this. Okay? All right, so quantum physics must not be true because it doesn't make sense to me. Okay? So in an appeal to incredulity, one claims that a statement is false, okay, because it is confusing or, I guess, unexpected. Okay? It doesn't make sense to me, so quantum physics must not be true. Okay? And that's simply because I don't understand it. It's confusing to me. Okay? Well, that's a fallacy. Okay? All right. How about appeal to consequences? Learning math must be important because otherwise I'm wasting my time for studying math class. In an appeal to consequences, a claim must be true because if it were false, something bad would happen. Or because if it were true, something good would follow. Okay? So math must be important. Otherwise, I wouldn't be wasting my time with it. Okay? So that's an appeal to the consequences. All right. Then we had our next one, which was fallacies of misinterpretation. Okay? So in these fallacies, one must misinterpret or misrepresent the premises to reach the conclusion. Okay. The judge said television at trial was not in the public interest, but the public is very interested in viewing this trial. Okay? This is equivocation. An argument relies on equivocation if a key term has different meaning in the premises than in the conclusion. Okay? So this was not in the public interest. Okay? That's different than being very interesting. Okay? Even though the same word is in there. Public interest means it's good for society. Okay? It doesn't mean interesting. Okay. Another example. Let's say person A and person B are having a debate. Person A says a woman's pay should be equal to men's for the same job. Okay. Person A thinks men's pay should be cut, but I think everyone should get paid for the salary they negotiated for. Okay. This is what's called as a straw man. So when one argues against a straw man, one makes up a weaker version of the same viewpoint. Okay. So here, person A is what? Asking for women's pay to be equal to men's, so they're trying to raise that women's pay. Here, person B is saying a men's pay should be cut, but I also think everyone should get the pay they're negotiated for. Okay? So this argument is a lot weaker than what this is. One's going one way, one's going the other. All right? Another fallacy of misinterpretation. All math teachers are extremely polite. If you think you've ever had a rude math teacher, then they're not a rude math teacher, a real math teacher, just someone who happens to teach math. Okay? And this is what's called no true Scotsman. The no true Scotsman fallacy claims that every member of the group has property by excluding any member that doesn't have that property. So if we say all math teachers are polite and you've had one that's rude, well, we just take him out and say, well, he's not a real math teacher. And now it makes this true because we've taken out all the people that would make it false. Okay? So that is called no true Scotsman. Fallacy of misinterpretation. All right? And the last category we were talking about, these were called fallacies of sufficiency. Okay? All right, so in this, the premises are not enough to get us to the conclusion. Okay? So something important is missing. Okay? And I think these will be a little bit easier to see. All right? We all agree that college students should waste time and money on a lot of useless classes. Therefore, the number of credits of humanities required for graduation should be decreased. Okay? So this is called begging the question. Okay? One begs the question when a key point, okay, of the argument is included as a premise. Okay? Often not stated. Okay? Presumably, whoever thinks humanity classes should be required doesn't think they're useless. Okay? So we can all agree that college students shouldn't waste time and money for a lot of useless classes. Therefore, the number of credit hours of humanities should be required for, or should be decreased. Okay? So, again, this tells us down here, be careful with this one. Okay? A lot of people say begs the question to mean raises the question. Okay? So be careful, because who's ever saying this, we all agree that college students shouldn't waste time and money on a lot of useless classes. Okay? So who's ever saying this obviously is thinking that humanities classes are useless. Okay? Right? So that's really not enough to make this statement. We would have to go, show somewhere what are useless classes. Okay? All right. If you're not with us, you're against us. Okay? So dichotomy is a fallacy of sufficiency. A false dichotomy assumes that one of the two things must be true, when the fact that there may be other options. Okay, so if you're not with us, you're against us. Well, that's not, there are other things. You might agree with us on some things and not on others. Okay? So again, this is false dichotomy. It's not one or the other. Okay? There are other options. All right, and then this last one is called slippery slope. Okay? I can't let you turn in your homework a day late, because soon nobody will do doing any homework until the last day of the semester. Okay? And the slippery slope is an argument that claims that action shouldn't be taken because it leads to further actions. Okay, without any extra evidence. So, if I let you turn in homework a day late, that doesn't mean that nobody's going to be turning in homework now till the end of the semester. Okay, so that's kind of a slippery, what we call a slippery slope fallacy, because we're taking an action, and that doesn't necessarily lead to further actions of nobody doing any homework. Okay, so be careful. So again, fallacies of sufficiency are begs the question, false dichotomy, and a slippery slope. So I would kind of have these things ready when you're doing your homework. Have these little boxes out, because it's going to be, one of these. What did we get here? 4. We have 10 different fallacies with names. So be careful with a lot of that. Okay. So that was logical fallacies. And again, not a lot of algebra or anything we're doing here. This is just getting us ready to do some logical thinking.